आज 2 मिनट का इंतजार करना पड़ा हमें सबको, but all I believe is all is in divine order. Things have a way of happening in their own time. May we all close our eyes and get into a meditative state, taking off our glasses, relaxing totally and completely. And in this moment of total surrender, invoke the blessings of the
बहुत
divine
बढ़िया ब्रिजेश
to be with us
ओ ब्रिजेश बहुत बढ़िया हो
all
गया
through the day, in
वो
all our
तार बांधा
moments.
उसके ऊपर ले लिया
Today, tomorrow, and always. I sit comfortably, take a deep breath in, close my eyes if I wish, relaxing all the muscles in and around my eyes. I relax my body by releasing any areas of tension. I allow my arms and legs to go loose and relaxed. Now, relax my neck and back by relaxing the spine, releasing the muscles all the way from the head down the neck, along each vertebrae to the base of the spine. I breathe deeply into my diaphragm, drawing air fully into the lungs, and release the air with a whooshing sound. Another deep breath out with a I breathe in again, slowly, pause for a moment and breathe out, drawing a deep breath in and out, in and out. I am becoming more and more relaxed with each breath. I now feel a wave of relaxation flow from the soles of my feet to my ankles, lower legs, hips, sacred zone, abdomen, chest, back, hands, shoulders, neck, back of the head, face, and the top of my head. I now see myself walking towards the ocean. I can hear the waves. I can smell the ocean spray. The air is moist and warm. I come closer to the sea and see the brilliant aqua color of the ocean ahead. I walk onto a long stretch of white sand. The sand is soft and I walk towards the water. The beach is wide and long. I see the waves washing up onto the sand and receding back towards the ocean, washing up and flowing back down. As I come close to the shore, I feel the mist from the ocean on my skin. A wave washes over the sand towards me and touches my toes before receding. I now walk back a little, finding myself a comfortable spot to sit. I am enjoying this moment of solitude, being with myself, and I sit with myself. Some situations come up to my mind where the others were angry at me, or I was in a state of conflict. And I ask myself, that am I willing to let go of this anger, knowingly or unknowingly? I now call upon the divine to help me release any angry energy sent to me intentionally or unintentionally, that is stored or creating attacks on my back, my shoulders, neck, and any other area of my body. I scan my back. I rest in calm, very calm, as I breathe, see, feel these attack forms being lifted from different parts of my body. These forms may appear like spears, arrows, knives, or any other instrument of attack. I may experience heaviness being lifted or see clouds of smoky energy. I trust and allow the divine to lift these energies from my energy field. As these instruments are floating and being removed from my back and body, I may get thoughts and memories about who sent it to me. I am kind and compassionate towards the person and not judge them, him or her, because as I judge, I will create more cycles of attack. I resist any temptation to get angry or retaliate. If I can, I wrap the person or the situation in pink and green light and release the energy to the divine. This helps to break the cycles of further attacks. I continue to take few more deep breaths and I feel calmer and lighter. Now I see a powerful, healing, emerald green light in all the places where I felt attacked. This light is now restoring my energies and body to its true state of natural wholeness. I am now wrapped in a purple light which creates an additional field of protection. I am now clear and whole, clear and whole, clear and whole. And I now invoke the divine to assist me in clearing any misunderstandings and move towards more harmonious relationships. I now request the divine to wrap me in a pale blue light for calm and peace. And I see myself being wrapped in the pale blue light. And as I am being wrapped, I feel calm and peace settling within my being. I stay in this space for a few moments. I let go of images, if any, coming back to the here and now. I rub my palms, put them on my eyes. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Coming back to the here and now, I open my eyes and become fully alert, refreshed, filled with energy, calm, and peaceful. Welcome back.
Thank you, Swati. That very nice
Ram.
meditation experience for all of us. Let's begin our journey today on chapter 15 by invoking the blessings of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Please be with us. Namaskara, Shubhodaya, good morning, and welcome back to our session on the Gita. And today we are going to be doing something interesting, which is we're going to be talking about chapter 15 and how we move. So we've been through a very interesting journey till now. We started almost 3 weeks ago, and we've covered 14 chapters till now. If you just to quickly recap, the first 6, if you remember, was all about the self and about selfless action. And then the next 6 chapters were primarily about the divinity within. And these 6 chapters, as I explained, are all about how do you realize the Paramatma? How do you realize the Lord? So in many ways, this is known as the Purushottama Prapti Yoga chapter. So in the last chapter, chapter 14, if you recall, Krishna tells Arjuna about the importance of bhakti. In chapter 14, verse 26, he says that, look, those who serve me with unflinching devotion are extremely dear to me. And they are the people who are going to be realizing me in every which way. And therefore, this chapter is all about the knowledge, the jnana, the wisdom, the vijnana, the wisdom, and how do you actually realize the Paramatman? How do you realize the Purushottama? How do you get to that particular state of mind where you are ready to receive the Purushottama? So clearly, Arjuna now has moved from his conditioning perspective. He is now ready to receive the ancient science, of the Purushottama, of the Paramatma, and he is now ready, and like all of us are ready to understand what is the meaning of this whole Purushottama. What is the meaning of the ultimate Paramatma? So we pick up this particular chapter with 3 verses, verse 1, 2, and 3. They are one of the most interesting verses in the Bhagavad Gita. And you will all recognize verse 1 because along with Karmanyavadikaraste, which is chapter 247, and the Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya, this is another chapter, another verse which has become very popular in folklore, in the way we talk. So Srini, with your permit, if you'll help us please, verse 1 first.
अथ पञ्चदशोऽध्यायः भगवानुवाच ऊर्ध्वमूलमधः शाखम् अश्वत्थं प्राहुरव्ययम् छन्दांसि यस्य पर्णानि यस्तं वेद स वेदवित्।
श्री भगवान बोले, ऊपर की ओर मूल वाले तथा नीचे की ओर शाखा वाले चार रूप अश्वत्थ वृक्ष अव्यय कहते हैं, और वेद जिसके पत्ते हैं, उस संसार वृक्ष को जो जानता है वह संपूर्ण वेदों को जानने वाला है।
Second stanza, Shri.
अधश्चोर्ध्वं प्रसृतास्तस्य शाखाः गुणप्रवृद्धा विषयप्रवालाः अधश्च मूलान्यनुसंसतानि कर्मानुबन्धीनि मनुष्यलोके।
उस संसार वृक्ष की गुणों, जो कि सत्व, रज और तम है, के द्वारा बढ़ी हुई तथा विषय कोपलों वाली शाखाएं नीचे, मध्य में और ऊपर सब जगह फैली हुई हैं। मनुष्य लोक में कर्मों के अनुसार बांधने वाले मूल भी नीचे और ऊपर सभी लोकों में व्याप्त हो रहे हैं।
Srini, we'll do 1 and 2 and then we'll get to 3 later. Okay, just give me a minute. We'll do 1 and 2 first. So, Sri Krishna is now, he opens this chapter and he talks about this Ashwatha, this banyan tree. And he talks about this banyan tree with its roots above and its branches below. Now, I want you to picture this in your mind because, the normal concept of the banyan tree is, of course, what we are seeing, wherein we have the roots at the bottom and we have the banyan tree going up. But he gives us a very interesting thought here, saying that, think of this eternal Ashwatha tree, this eternal banyan tree that is there. Now, this banyan tree is coming right from the top and it is getting down, and it's, the branches, the roots of the banyan tree are also coming in. If you recall a banyan tree, one of the important things about the banyan tree is that it, from the branches, again, it starts generating its own roots, and those roots come down and start taking form on the earth. So he says, if you can think of this particular banyan tree with its roots above and its branches below, its leaves are the Vedas. And if you know this, then you know the Vedas. Then he goes on to explain in stanza 2, the branches that this upside down Ashwatha tree has are nourished by the gunas. If you remember last chapter, we did the gunas in great length, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And he said, with the branches which are nourished by the gunas of this upside down Ashwatha tree, okay, the buds are the sense objects, and its leaves are the Vedas, and it's the roots that cause the roots that come down from the branches are the ones that cause the action in the world of men. I just want you to pause and think for a minute. If you recall in chapter 14, he very clearly mentioned that every person, the whole of nature, Prakriti and Purusha, the Jiva and the Jivatma, take their origin from the Paramatma, from the Purushottam. So what he is trying to tell us is that this samsara vriksham, as it is known as, is something that originates up there. But then by the time it comes down, it binds us into action. It binds us into action because it's the roots that come down from that inverted banyan tree are what come in and start binding us into the kind of action that we need to get to. So this legendary upside down banyan tree is referred to quite a few times in our Shruti. This supreme Brahman is the person who actually is giving us those roots from there. And as that roots come down, whether it is the gunas, the Vedas, the sense objects, and those roots that come down from the branches of the banyan tree start binding us into action. Okay? So all the aspects that we keep talking about, this particular banyan tree is bringing us, it brings it all together. It talks of the Vedas, okay, as its leaves. It talks about the branches as the gunas. it talks about the fruits as the sense objects. And finally, those roots that drop down, he says it is those roots that drop down from the branches that lead to action in all of us. I just wanted to hold this thought that the origin of this upside down banyan tree is right up there in the Paramatma. But when those roots come down, that roots take shape of action in the world of men. So keep this, just picture this. It's a very, very interesting thing that Krishna talks about. As I said, this is one of the most, this Urdhva Moolam Adhashakam is one of the most used metaphors about this samsara vriksham that all of us are getting involved in. Whether it is the Vedas, which represent the knowledge, the rituals, the practices, etc., the leaves, which are the sense objects, the sense organs, the branches, which are the gunas, and those roots that induce action in men. So what is Krishna's advice to us? Srini, verse number 3, and 4 also at the same time.
अरूपमस्येह ततोपलभ्यते नान्तो न चादिर्न च सम्प्रतिष्ठा अश्वत्थमेनं सुविरूढमूलम् असङ्गशस्त्रेण दृढेन चित्वा।
इस संसार वृक्ष का स्वरूप जैसा कहा गया है वैसा यहाँ उपलब्ध नहीं होता है, क्योंकि इसका न आदि है और न अंत और न प्रतिष्ठा ही है। इस अति दृढ़ मूल वाले अश्वत्थ वृक्ष को दृढ़ शस्त्र से काटकर नेक्स्ट स्लाइड
4 please.
ततः पदं तत्परिमार्गितव्यम् यस्मिन् गता न निवर्तन्ते भूयः तमेव चाद्यं पुरुषं प्रपद्ये यतः प्रवृत्तिः प्रसृता पुराणी।
उसके बाद उस परम पद परमात्मा की खोज करनी चाहिए, जिसको प्राप्त होने पर मनुष्य फिर लौटकर संसार में नहीं आते और जिससे अनादिकाल से चली आने वाली यह सृष्टि विस्तार को प्राप्त हुई है, उस आदि पुरुष परमात्मा के ही मैं शरण हूँ।
All right. So what, when he explained this to us, saying that, look, it is very difficult for us to perceive this tree. Even now, I'm sure that a number of you would be having this doubt, saying, okay, how can you actually, you're used to seeing a banyan tree, and then, it's got its branches, it's got its leaves, and then it's got its roots below. Now, you need to figure out that the banyan tree's origin is somewhere up there. So if you can look at this banyan tree as an upside down banyan tree in a way, in a manner of speaking, he says it's very difficult because it has no beginning, it has no base, it has no end. But his advice to us is very clear. He says that, look, cut this banyan tree's roots with the axe, the weapon of non-attachment. And if you can cut this with the weapon of non-attachment, because this is one of the most important things that he's telling us. You see, this is this feeling that nourishes a feeling of me, or it creates this ego. It is this tree exists in all of us, and we constantly engage with it. Okay, look at what he tells us. We constantly engage with this tree as per the dictates of that particular tree. Because though it is completely unseen, he's told us very clearly that, look, there is this amount of knowledge which are its leaves, the Vedas. He says it is the gunas, the branches, okay? What we talked about, sattva, rajas, and tamas. It is these sense objects which are the buds and the fruits. And its roots are what produces action. And it is this that binds us into this feeling of me and mine. And when that feeling of me and mine comes in, we naturally start getting attached to everything around it. We get attached to our knowledge, that I am the most knowledgeable person on some particular subject. Or we can get attached to those gunas that are coming in the way, those sense objects. So this attachment that comes for this particular tree and the action that is performed from whatever knowledge you have, whatever be the guna that you're experiencing at that point of time, and the sense organs, all of these which produce that action, we get attached to that particular action in life. And Krishna's advice to us is that take the weapon of non-attachment, take the axe of non-attachment and cut the roots of that particular tree. Because when you can cut that roots of that tree, then you can start going higher and seeking the Paramatman, the Purushottama that is there. You can start seeking him in every way, in everything that you do. You see, if you cut that tree with the axe of non-attachment, then what happens is this, that you can start working on your higher purpose in life, on your Swadharma, and the goal that is that of realizing the Supreme Brahman within you. So he tells Arjuna very clearly, even I seek refuge in this ancient Purusha that I'm asking you to now go and start searching for. Because this ancient Purusha, this Purushottama that I'm talking about, the supreme consciousness that is there, even I go and seek refuge in that, Arjuna. It's not just you. So can you please go and start searching for that without getting attached to those roots that are coming and binding you down into the action, the outcome, and the fruits that you're going to get. And he very clearly tells us that once with the axe of non-attachment, you can actually sever those roots that are coming down, then you will have the time to start looking for the higher self. And he tells us, okay, how do you go about and get that goal? How do you actually pursue that Swadharma? The first thing he tells us is that by freeing yourself from ignorance. If you recall even in chapter 14, he tells us this clearly, that free yourself from that ignorance that happens in life. Get completely free from that ignorance, because that is that ignorance that causes pride and deludes you. So the first thing you need to do is to free yourself of that particular ignorance that is deluding you. The second thing he says, that overcome this attachment to the fruits of action. If you recall, he says those roots that are coming down symbolically are what are causing action. And it is that those roots that are binding you into the fruits of action. So he says, completely get away from those fruits of that action. Don't get into that fruits of the action. Be outcome oriented rather than fruit oriented. And the third thing that he says is that overcome all your desires, because it is those desires that you have that when they get unsatiated, control your desires, recognize them. It is not wrong to have a set of desires, but then if those desires get unsatiated, then obviously they will lead to, you remember, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. And then finally, he says, you must try and be equal to pleasure and pain. If you recall, we went through so many concepts, which is a recurring theme in the Bhagavad Gita of the Sthita Prajna, of the Gunatita. He says, completely be equal to pleasure and pain, which means any kind of obstacles that come, any praise that comes your way, any criticism that comes your way, be equal to that. Don't get carried away either by the praise that comes your way or the criticism that comes your way. Both are bound to happen. That is what is life. That is what life is all about. And finally, he says, have complete devotion. Have that bhakti. Inculcate that bhakti, because it is that bhakti, it is that devotion that will help you embark on this journey of finding that ultimate Purushottama that is there in life. So this Purushottama that we are talking about, again, we can look at Purushottama from two perspectives. One, we can look at it as something which is external, and something that we can look at it which is internal. Okay? And if you look at that Purushottama, that greatness within you that is waiting to be explored, because remember, he said, I am the person who creates that Purushottama within you, but can you start recognizing that higher self that is waiting within you to be explored? He then goes on to say that, look, what is the goal of that? What is the goal that you can work with? Obviously, it is to achieve that supreme soul within you. It is to achieve that Purushottama that within you. And why should you do that? Because he says, look, that is something which is so deep within you, that is deep within us. It is this Purushottama, it is that Godhood that is there. Because he gives us a very interesting thing. He says, look, the sun does not illuminate that part. Neither does the moon, nor does the fire. None of these can go and touch that Purushottama, that is there, and therefore start working on that realization of that supreme inner self, that Godhood that is waiting to be discovered, that Godhood that is there. And again, we come back to this recurring theme saying, it is this Purushottama that is within you, that is what you need to be working on. So we pick this up again in verse number 7. And Srini, play verse 7 for us, please.
ममैवांशो जीवलोके जीवभूतः सनातनः मनःषष्ठानीन्द्रियाणि प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति।
इस जीवलोक में जीव बना हुआ आत्मा मेरा ही सनातन अंश है, परंतु वह देह त्याग के समय प्रकृति में स्थित मन और पांचों इंद्रियों को आकर्षित करता है।
Okay, so what is he saying? He says that look, it's only a small portion of the Purushottama. It is only a small portion of that supreme self, the Paramatma, that resides in the eternal soul that is within each of us, and it is this that draws us to the interplay of the six senses. Keep that in mind. Okay, so he is very clearly trying to tell us that look, it is the Paramatma which is a small part that resides in the Jivatma. And if you recall, it is that Jivatma. So you remember we made this distinction sometime back, saying there is this Paramatma, there is this Jivatma, and there is this Jiva, which is the body. So there's a small part of that Paramatma resides in the Jivatma. And that Jivatma that resides in the body, which is the Jiva. And it is this Jiva that interacts with the six senses, with the senses, the mind and the five senses start interacting with the whole world. So keep this in mind. So if you can control this part of what the Jiva is doing, then obviously the Jivatma and the Jiva get aligned. And that is the time that you can get into this quest for understanding your higher self, the Paramatma, of realizing the Purushottama. Now, very interesting, he gives us two very beautiful stanzas, 8 and 9. Srini, will you play that for us, please?
शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यस्याप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानि वाशयात्।
जैसे वायु गंध के स्थान से गंध को ग्रहण करके ले जाती है, ऐसे ही शरीर का स्वामी बना हुआ जीवात्मा भी जिस शरीर को छोड़ता है, वहाँ से मन सहित इंद्रियों को ग्रहण करके फिर जिस शरीर को प्राप्त होता है उसमें चला जाता है।
श्रोत्रं चक्षुस्पर्शनं च रसनं घ्राणमेव च अधिष्ठाय मनश्चायं विषयान् उपसेवते।
यह जीवात्मा मन का आश्रय लेकर श्रोत्र, नेत्र, त्वचा, रसना और घ्राण इन पांचों इंद्रियों के द्वारा विषयों का सेवन करता है।
Right? Okay. So what is he saying? This is a very interesting point that he says. So when the Paramatma leaves the Jivatma, okay, when the Paramatma leaves the Jivatma and the Jiva, okay, when the Jivatma leaves the Jiva and moves on, it acquires another body. What he's saying is that all these six senses are then carried by that Jivatma into another Jiva. The reason why we celebrate the birth of a new child is we are saying, okay, here is another example of the Paramatma taking life in this young child. And therefore, you celebrate that. So when you celebrate birth, you shouldn't even grieve for somebody who dies, because this is a normal process. Don't even get worried about it. That this jivatma that is there will move on from this jiva, from this body, and will get into another body at some point of time. And when that happens, there is no, one need not grieve for the fact that there is somebody who has left this particular, this jivatma, who has left this jiva and has moved on in life. So don't grieve about it. He says, just like the wind, which carries the fragrance from one place to other without getting any attachment to that fragrance. The wind does not make any difference. It does not say that, this is good, this is bad, this is smelling extremely good, this is not very bad, this is not smelling bad. It just makes sure that it keeps moving from place to place and it carries those scents. Likewise, he is telling us that please understand that when this jivatma moves from one jiva to another jiva, okay, that is when birth happens. And that is why, we get so excited when there is a new, when there is a new baby which is born, because what are we celebrating at that time? We are celebrating the fact that there is a new Atma that has come in to reside with us. There is a new manifestation of that Paramatma through a Jivatma that has now come into this young Jiva who we are now blessed with to have in our house. We celebrate that. Okay, but there is no point even in grieving when somebody, when somebody moves on. You will miss the person. There is no. But then when the person moves on, that is something which is part of the cycle. So in the new body, when this soul will once more start figuring out the interplay of the senses, the ears, the eye, mouth, the nose, the skin, and the sense objects, then the mind gets into that. Now the whole problem is this, that it is you remember earlier he said that it is, you must get out of that ignorance, you must get out of that delusion that we are all living in. Now if we want to get out of that particular ignorance, he says, look, it is those ignorant people who do not perceive the soul for what it is. And it is these ignorant person on the basis of leaving a body, or when they are in that particular body, they experience those sense objects and they get completely carried away. It is the wise and the knowledgeable people who don't get carried away by this. It is this wisdom that we need to figure out, saying we don't need to get carried away either with the fact that there is a new jiva or the fact that this jiva has moved on. So this is the final thing about that attachment that he says, take that axe of non-attachment and cut those roots. Because if we can get out of that feeling, we celebrate a new jiva, but it doesn't matter. We don't need to get into excessive grief that there is one jiva that is passed on from, one jivatma that is passed on from this jiva and will possibly enter into another jiva. Keep that in mind. And therefore, he very clearly tells us in verse number 11, he says, look, it is the wise, the yogis, who sees the Paramatma in everybody. But it is the ignorant who can't see that. It is we who delude ourselves and don't see the glory of the Paramatma within everybody. And we are only seeing one aspect, one manifestation in us. And what he is trying to exhort us is to that, saying, try and figure out a way, how can you start seeing the Paramatma? How can you start seeing the glory of the Paramatma in everything that you do? And he takes us through some beautiful stanzas from 12 to 15, in which he very clearly explains to us, how can you start seeing the Paramatma again? You see, one of the interesting things about the Bhagavad Gita is this, that I think somewhere, there is a very famous research that has been done. And that research says that it takes us 6 different times to move from one point to another point. If you want to change your mind, you need to go through 6 reiterations of the same concept. Only then will you move. That's why they say, the first time somebody says, why don't you change your mindset and do this? Your immediate reaction is, I can't do it. And the next time you hear the same thing, your mind is still saying, no, I don't think I can. It's only the third time that you hear the same concept saying, let me tell you, why don't you try this out? And then you figure out and you say, maybe I can. And it's the fourth time when you hear it, you say, yeah, I think I can. And it's the fifth time that you actually say, I can. And it's the sixth time that you will say, I will. Now, that entire research of moving from I can't to I will is so beautifully captured in the Gita. So what the Gita is, what Sri Krishna keeps doing to Arjuna is that he keeps repeating to Arjuna this particular concept of the Paramatma. If you recall, we did this so many times earlier. And he says, I am the imperishable. Remember, listen to me, Arjuna. This is my manifestations. Try and understand. But this time what he is doing is he is doing it interestingly. He is now going to teach us that in your day-to-day life, where all can you see the glory of the Paramatma that is there. So in verse 12, he says, the light in the sun, the moon, and the fire. Remember, recognize that the Paramatma, the Purushottama. From, and then he tells us one more thing. I support all with the energy that I give. I nourish all vegetation. And I help the moon raise the waters. It is I who am doing all of this. It is this Purushottama doing all of this. Where do you think this nourishing that happens in the earth? Where do you think it is this moon, when the moon is in the full moon and the waters rise? How does this happen? How does high tide happen? It is I who am creating all of this. It is that Purushottama that is doing all of this. I support all beings. That's what he tells us. And he says, look, I reside in all beings as the power of digestion. And united with breathing, the prana and the apana, I aid in the digestion of everything that you have. So look at the beauty of the fact that he says, all of modern science has not been able to explain this to us till date. We only know one thing, that when you eat food, there are enzymes and those enzymes will digest it. But where do those enzymes come from? We know the fact that, the breath that you take, the inflowing breath and the outgoing breath, when that stops, life stops. And we know that is the oxygen that through the blood gets into every part of the human body. And therefore, Krishna is telling us that, listen, my friend, whatever you do in your day-to-day life, whether it is the sun, whether it is the moon, whether it is the fire, I help in vegetation, I help in growing those crops. It is I who pour my, great self into each one of these. And this is what will help you in whatever you do. And then he goes on to tell us something very, very interesting. He says, let me tell you one thing. In verse number 15, he says, I reside in your heart. I am the one who resides in your heart. I am the one who causes memory and wisdom and its loss. I am the one who gives origin to that memory that you have, that wisdom that you have. And even the absence of that is my play. Keep this in mind. Okay? And then he tells us something very important. He says, I am known through all the Vedas, all the glory that you can think of, the entire Vedantic thought process, all of this has emerged from me. And the many manifestations that he talks about. Okay? Look at the interesting part. He says, it is the Paramatma that a small part of that Paramatma gets into the Jivatma, the soul, and it is this Jivatma that is residing in the Jiva. So just think of the magnitude of what he is trying to tell us. And then each of those small things that he describes very beautifully that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. And that is the beauty of this particular chapter. He says, look, light comes from me. Energy comes from me. Nourishment of earth, that is something that comes from me. Water, the way the water is rising, the tides, that is something from me. Digestion, again, it is something from me. Breathing is again something from me. I live in your heart. Okay? The memory, the knowledge that you have, the wisdom that you have of the Vedas, all of these are, they are in my origin. And therefore, whenever you see these absolutely day-to-day wonders around you, the minute you start thinking that, look, it is divine manifestation that I am actually using, I am playing with, there is an interplay that I have with these divine manifestations. Science is able to explain these things to us, But what he is trying to tell Arjuna and through Arjuna to all of us is that it is these divine manifestations that you go through on a day-to-day basis. All of this originate from me. And therefore, start thinking of that Paramatma. So as humans, on a daily basis, we interact with all of these. And let us start being grateful for what we've got and grateful to that Supreme Paramatma that is there, which is enabling all of this for us. It is this point that he tells us that, look, it is these daily manifestations that are happening, and this is something that I'm able to share with you right now. And then he goes on to something very interesting from verse 16 to almost to the end of the chapter. But from 16 onwards, he gets into something very well. He says, look, I've talked to you about the daily manifestations. Now let me talk to you about the science of the Paramatma. Okay? This ancient science that, of the Paramatma, let me talk to you about it. So he makes it very clear the difference between the Purusha and the Paramatma. If you recall, we said there is this Purusha and the Paramatma. Let us see what we tell. He says there are two aspects of the Purusha. One is the perishable and then the imperishable. Okay, the Jiva and the Jivatma. Okay, this is part of the Purusha. But the Paramatma is different from both. And that's his message to us, saying that, listen, please understand that while the Purusha has the perishable and the imperishable part, which is the Jiva and the Jivatma, the Paramatma that we are talking about, this Purushottama that we are talking about, is much, much beyond all of this. Okay? Because this person is one who sustains the entire world. He is the one who sustains the Jivatma, and he is the one who sustains the Jiva. So when we keep saying about this higher self that is there within each one of us, when we keep talking about the Paramatma that is there, that is residing in us, that higher self that is there within us, start respecting that and start figuring out a way of how we can do that. He gives another very beautiful example in verse number 18. Srini, will you just share that with us, please?
यस्माक्षरमतीतोऽहम् अक्षरादपि चोत्तमः अतोऽस्मि लोके वेदे च प्रथितः पुरुषोत्तमः.
क्योंकि मैं क्षर से अतीत हूँ और अक्षर से भी उत्तम हूँ, इसलिए लोक में और वेद में भी पुरुषोत्तम के नाम से प्रसिद्ध हूँ.
That's what he's trying. He tells us very clearly that please understand that the Paramatma, the higher self, the supreme self, is beyond both the Jiva and the Jivatma, the perishable and the imperishable. He says, because I'm way, way, way out of that. In the Vedas, people know me, the Vedas, the Smritis, they call me the Supreme Divine Personality or the Purushottama. And it is the Supreme Being, the Supreme Lord that is there. Now just take a minute and reflect about this. We get so carried away by what is happening to our body. We get carried away by what is happening to the manifestations of the body and the actions that happen with the sense organs. But if we can step back for a minute and start thinking of ourselves saying that, oh my God, I have got this absolute higher Purushottama within me. Even if it is a small, tiny part of him that has come into my Jivatma, that inner soul that I've got. Just think of how blessed we are. And just think of how much we can achieve in our life if we were only to allow that Purushottama to come in. And therefore he is saying very clearly, please understand this Paramatma, this Purushottama that is there is much, much beyond both the Jiva and the Jivatma. So if you recall, when he starts talking, he says, it is this upturned Ashwatha tree. Okay, that is, I am the Paramatma, the Purushottama is actually giving way for the Jivatma and the Jiva. And the Jiva's interaction with the rest of the world through actions that you perform. So it is this inner self that is there within all of us that we need to get out, we need to bring to the fore in whatever we are doing, because that is our Swadharma. Our Swadharma is to help that inner self, that higher self, to manifest itself and to take its rightful place. And therefore he says, whoever is free from that ignorance, he is someone, whoever is free from this ignorance, saying what? This secret that he has revealed, saying it is the Paramatma, Jivatma and the Jiva. And the Jiva interacting through the senses, through the mind to everything around you. And we get caught in that particular trap of what is happening around us. Unfortunately, in this process, we don't recognize or we don't allow that Paramatma, that Purushottama, to express themselves through us. So let's go to the verse number 20, Shani.
गुह्यतमं शास्त्रम् इदमुक्तं मया नघ एतत् बुद्ध्वा बुद्धिमान् स्यात् कृतकृत्यश्च भारत।
हे निष्पाप अर्जुन, इस प्रकार यह अत्यंत गोपनीय शास्त्र मेरे द्वारा कहा गया है। हे भरतवंशी अर्जुन, इसको जानकर मनुष्य ज्ञानवान तथा प्राप्तव्य और कृत्य हो जाता है।
So this supreme secret is now being revealed to all of us. It is this supreme secret now that we are all getting. And he says it is this science, please understand this particular science, O Arjuna, and through Arjuna to us. He says, look, I have explained the supreme secret of the Purushottama to you. That there is this Uttam Purush, which is there within you. And it is your job to bring that out. Because the day you do so, he goes on to say, that the day you bring that Purushottama into play, then all the activities that you want, everything that you want to accomplish in your life, you will be able to accomplish. So what he is actually trying to tell us is this, that look, you have taken up a particular, you have gone on to the path of your Swadharma, and there is something that you want to achieve in your life. And when you want to achieve in your life, keep this in mind, that if you were to get out of the manifestations of the body and what your body is doing, the Jiva, and if you can recognize that the Jivatma is what moves on from body to body, but it is this Purushottama that is part of you. That this Purushottama that resides in you, this higher self that resides in you, if you can bring that Purushottama into play on a daily basis, then it is that Purushottama that will help you accomplish everything that you want to accomplish in your world, in your life. Okay? So there are two messages that he is giving us. One, a message directly to Arjuna in the battlefield saying, oh God, please get up and fight, my friend. That is your Swadharma. Because there is this part of me within you which is telling you to go and do what you should be doing. But there is another deeper meaning to all of us, that if we need to rise above what is happening to us on a day-to-day basis, if we need to get out of that, of that interplay of what is happening, which could be, attaching us to those fruits of our action, and therefore, that ignorance that comes, if we can get out of that entire thinking and start seeing that, look, I have this higher self within me, I have this Purushottama within me. Can I bring that Purushottama into play on a day-to-day basis? So while we are working on our higher purpose, this is the alignment of, if you remember, we said your Swadharma is your higher purpose in life. And if you can thus align what you're doing, the higher purpose, with the higher self that you have, with the Purushottama that you have, just imagine the kind of combination that you will have, and just imagine the kind of energy that you will have in going and doing what you need to be doing on a day-to-day basis. Because that is something that will guide you, that is something that will help you, and that is something that will get you firmly on the path of what you want to achieve in your life. So we need to now, therefore, integrate all these separate things that we've been talking about till now. Because from 16, 17, 18, we get into another area altogether. One is bhakti, that devotion. What is this bhakti that you have? What is this devotion? Because he says devotion is what brings in the faith in you. The next is this jnana, the wisdom that you need. So you need that bhakti, you need that wisdom, and you need to translate it into karma, which is yoga. So if you can translate this into significant action, then you can certainly accomplish anything that you want. And he is telling Arjuna and through Arjuna to us that, look, make sure that you don't get attached. Take that axe of non-attachment, sever those roots which are binding you down, and then start searching for that Purushottama within. Because when you get that Purushottama, and that Purushottama starts, that is the higher self within you, starts working with your higher purpose, which is your Swadharma, obviously you're going to be achieving everything that you want to achieve. So with this, we close chapter 15. So just a quick recap. If you recall, he starts off with the Ashwatha tree, the upturned Ashwatha tree that promotes attachment. And he says, take that, cut it out. He talks about the Paramatma, the Jivatma, and the Jiva. And he says how you need to figure out a way of getting that higher purpose, that higher self within you in alignment with your higher purpose. And he says, don't get worried about the Jiva. Rise above this whole cycle of death and birth. Remember, it is that Purushottama that manifests in the Jivatma. The Jivatma is in the Jiva. And when this Jivatma leaves this particular Jiva, there is no need to either feel, grief, or, of course, you will feel very happy when there is a birth of some new Jiva that comes in, because here is another opportunity that he's giving us to figure out a way of doing what we need to do. He says very clearly that I reside in your heart. It is this Purushottama that is in your heart. If you recall, we said, make your mind a slave of the heart. And therefore, we come back to this particular chapter and he says, I am now revealing this ancient science to you. Use it and achieve your Swadharma, because that is the way that you will achieve the happiness that you need to achieve. So with that, we close this. Om Tat Sat. Now we're open to any thoughts, any suggestions, any ideas, any questions, any observations. Let's move on into that. Thank you very much.
Ram, I have a question.
Shishu,
Yes, please.
sorry,
Ram, after today's session, there is one question.
Shishu, in verse 9, there is word. Okay, Raji, you go ahead.
Okay. After today's session, there is one question that has really come up in my mind.
Yes.
And I've been thinking about all that we've been talking over the last 15 days.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of death?
That's the
Move on.
Because if the journey of the soul is to go on and on and on from one body to another body, what is the purpose of death? Why kill it?
So you finished your journey here, okay? And you're now ready to move on. That's it.
Hey, move on where? I'm moving on into another body.
Absolutely. So death is just a death. See, the point is this, that if you're working on your entire Swadharma, death is just an occurrence here. It just happens. That's it.
No, I agree with that. But I'm trying to understand the deeper meaning. What is the purpose? What is the soul? See, every action, like you said, that there has to be it has to be result oriented. So if the journey of the soul is to continue living from one body into another, I mean, probably the origin of the soul would have happened many centuries back, and I may have gone through. My soul may have gone through a lot of births and deaths, but ultimately I am coming back to the same thing. So, what is God trying to achieve by sitting down and getting death?
So he's actually saying that, look, okay, look at this from three perspectives, Raji. Death happens because of old age. Okay? That is one of the primary reasons why death happens, right? Okay? A lot of people die when they get old. So obviously he's saying that, look, you finished this cycle of life, now get on with another cycle now. Okay? That's one part. The second part, death happens when you're not really old, it happens very early. Okay? When maybe you're in your 50s or 60s or whatever it is. Or the third is it could happen when you're very young, when you could be 9 or 10 or 12 or 14 or whatever it is, right? The point is this, that look, death is just a incident that happens in your life, period. Okay. Now it is unfortunate when it happens at a very young age, or it happens, when at an age when you're ready to give back to life. It's a very unfortunate thing that, that actually happens at that time. But the normal thing about death, Rajiv, is that it happens in old age. So, you finish this particular cycle. Now it's time to move on. Okay. We grieve because, you've lost your father. I mean, I lost my father some time back. I lost my mother some time back. I grieve. I mean, I miss them. Even now, I miss them on a day-to-day basis. I mean, what to do? Okay. But they lived a good life. They lived, they were 83, 84, and then they moved on in life. They finished this particular cycle and you're moving on. Okay. What happens when somebody dies young, at the prime of age? Like recently we lost a good friend of ours. Okay. Now, you need to really figure out, say, okay, why is that happening? Okay. And if you also see that, Raji, okay, when you die like that, either in an accident or whatever it is, okay, now that is something which troubles you quite a lot. Saying, okay, why did this happen? And that is where that grief comes in. So when there is this normal cycle that happens, Rajiv, it's good. I mean, they moved on. Now they can come back and then they can restart the entire process of Swadharma. Right? It's only when somebody dies young, that's when you start questioning, saying, oh my God, I mean, why did you take him away? And that's when the grief is, a lot. When you die in your 30s or 40s or 50s or whatever it is, or even much younger, when you're 8, 10, 12, 14. That's when you wonder, saying, oh my God. Okay. But at the same time, if you see, we rationalize it, saying that maybe there was an illness that this guy couldn't overcome. Okay. Maybe death is a deliverance from that perspective. A lot of people see, if you die in an accident, that's, that is something which is very sad. But then people who fall ill and pass away, maybe it's a deliverance, Raji. Maybe it's his way of saying that, look, move on, come back. And then, maybe you try and, reinvent yourself. Okay.
But Ram, I mean, now this is all of a sudden opened, so many questions in my head that, see, they say, and we keep hearing from our forefathers and, ancestors and everything, that, your time of birth and time of death is, fixed. It is predefined, preordained, I mean, how does he decide that, this soul is going to live only 10 years and this is going to live 100 years? Because we have people who die within a couple of hours of birth, and there are people who die living more than 120 years. So if the whole purpose of the Almighty was that, the soul has to go through a journey, even if it's a predefined journey that, okay, you spend 50 years and then you will die and then you will be reborn for another 50 years. I mean, I can understand that, but today I'm confused in my mind that if he is the controller of everything, he is the oxygen I breathe, he is the enzyme in my body that helps to digest the food, he is the one who sits down and makes my organs work, he is part of my senses. I mean, if everything is there, he is there in everything, then what is the purpose of asking me that, after 50 you're going to die, but then you're going to go into another body?
Yeah, so now that you know that he is everywhere, let me attempt to answer that question. It's a very interesting question that you ask. Now that we know he is everywhere, now that he's Uttama, why don't you get on to achieving what you need to be achieving in your life? Why would you want to hold your? I'm not saying you, Raji, but I'm saying generally.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm saying, why would you want to hold yourself back in life? What is your purpose? Go ahead, achieve it, no? If your purpose is to bring 1 million smiles on people's faces, please go ahead and do it. If your purpose in life is to get that one smile on somebody's face, now go ahead and do it. Okay? Now that you know that there is somebody who's actually helping you in this whole, in the process of living in day-to-day existence, why don't we all figure out a way of saying, okay, what is my higher purpose? Now let me, for God's sake, go and achieve that higher purpose. Yeah. Why would you want to live a life which is boring and humdrum? Why would you not want to do justice to what is possible in your life? Okay. So you don't have to see, this is not, see, his whole point, no, Rajiv, is not a very fatalistic point. that he makes. He says, look, it doesn't matter. You've got 20 years to live. Great. Now live those 20 years like it is 200. Yeah. If you see some of our greatest philosophers, Rajiv, whether it is Swami Vivekananda or Adi Shankaracharya or whoever it is, these people died very young. They died in their 30s. But in those 30 years, Rajiv, they've packed 300. Yeah. No? So the learnings of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita are very clear. Don't be fatalistic and say, कि भाई एक दिन तो मेरे को मरना है तो आज मर जाऊंगा तो क्या? No. अब ये कब मरना है ठीक है वो तय होके आया वो ठीक है लेकिन आज can we live in such a way that whatever is that higher purpose that you have, saying okay, my higher purpose is to spread happiness for my family, please for God's sake go and do it. Why wait for tomorrow? That is his whole point to us. Okay, that now that you know that there is this Purushottama within you, now that you know that everything is happening as per some divine, now go ahead and achieve your purpose in life. Yeah, whatever is your purpose, now go ahead. No? How does it matter whether I'm going to live for the next 5 years or the next 50 years, Raj? Can I do what I need to do today to achieve my higher purpose? If I can, I think we're doing fine. Okay, midnight tomorrow morning, I don't know.
Ram, can
Ram,
I add
can
to
I
that?
add something to it?
Sorry.
Yeah, Ravish?
Ram, can I add something to Rajiv's question?
Swati, just 1 minute, Swati. Ravish wanted to say something. Ravish?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that he also speaks about moksha, which is the highest attainment. So that gets you out of the cycle of birth and death. That is why also he gives us a purpose and a reason to reach the moksha. So you get out of the circle. So that could be one way how the soul could get relieved. This is just my learning.
Yeah, Swati, go ahead.
So, Rajiv, would you be in class 1 all your life? Would you not want to be promoted to class 2, move to 10th, graduate? So, each lifetime, there is a particular learning. At the end of that lifetime, you assess yourself. Just like when you're moving from one class to the other, you make an assessment. So, when you leave the body, you go up. From a neutral perspective, you analyze your life. What were the lessons that you learned? What are the lessons that you missed out? Did you live your life properly? Did you miss out on something? Did you do something that was not right? Then how do you rectify that? Then you come to another life with a new soul plan. If you are in the same mental frame, if you continue to live the same life, will you be able to assess yourself from a neutral perspective? No.
Now, no, Swati, because now today, see the Bhagavad Gita, when I look at it now from a realistic point of view, are the rules and regulations of leading a lovely life. That is what God intended every individual to lead their life with. Okay, you have your Swadaram, you sit down and follow your Swadaram, you understand your gunas. I mean, all that we have learned now, these are rules and regulations of living a good life which God intended us to do. Okay, I would have lived my last 50 years of my life in a particular way and manner that I was living. Today, my eyes have reopened when I have gone through this session of this Bhagavad, saying that no, the purpose of God for getting my soul to be born in this life was that I follow His rules and regulations and principles and lead a normal life. So that realization has come in now, so which I will bring into my life lifestyle now. But I am still not very, convinced about this in my mind and head that there has to be an ultimate aim. One aim could be what Ravi suggested, that okay, I have lived my life as a noble human being just the way God intended to, and He's decided that the life cycle of my soul has to be stopped now, and I'm going to attain moksha. That's why I'm dying perfectly all right. But if I have to die to be reborn again and live the same life, then I might as well live for another 50 years, find my way about living by going through sessions and understanding what God intended me to do, and continue living, no? Till the time I become, become that great where I attain moksha.
Certain things happen in the head, and it takes a lot of time to actually materialize and live them in our concrete lifetimes, right? It is only when you see it from a neutral perspective that this was what I understood. The difference between knowledge and knowings. Knowledge is something that you are aware of. Knowing is when you start living that knowledge. And living that knowledge takes multiple lifetimes because in the same body you come with certain restrictions. Like if you keep living the body of a man, you will only understand the masculine aspect of it, right? But when you take birth in a feminine body, you will know what the receptivity is, what emotional world is. So we alternate between bodies, we alternate between lifetimes, and then there are 4 phases in life which we live: priest, pauper, prince, and prostitute. So these are basically 4 phases of life that we live through. Pauper is when you do not have abundance of any sorts. Then prostitute phase comes when you are being used in all ways. Then prince is when you have all the abundance. And then the priest phase comes when you start realizing wisdom. And then after the priest phase, it is time for liberation. So you live through all these cycles to understand each and every aspect of it. When you start from a grain of sand to a human life, you've lived everything. Within you, you have the memories of mineral kingdom. Within you, you have the memories of the insect kingdom, animal kingdom, plant kingdom. And over a period of time, when you transcend all the distortions of all these lifetimes, then you attain the moksha. And it is very essential to experience each lifetime and to transcend and transform those negatives of that particular lifetime.
I think again I'm repeating.
No, Rajiv.
If the object was to attain moksha and that is why death is a medium, fine, I accept that. But I'm saying to you, death as a medium, why would he plan this way? I mean, today, when we keep talking about old age and all, but it is the God that is there inside me, no? So why can't my organs last for more than 100 years? I mean, why do they have to sit down and slow down after 50 years, and things like that? If I maintain my body healthily, and if I sit down and imbibe all these learnings that I've learned from the Gita, then I should sit down and live till the time my soul is ready to attain moksha. So I'm just a bit confused.
Rajiv.
Why would he bring this break in?
No, let me try and come in. I'm not too sure about the 4 things that Swati talked about. This is a new one even to me, so I'm...
See, Rajiv, with every lifetime, you will come with a different soul family. You will come with different people around, and each person who's around you will help you to learn certain life lessons. You cannot be in a state of stagnation like a pond. When you're living in the same body, you become like a pond. Where is the flow? Where is the surrender? Where is growth? There is stagnation in a pond. And if you talk of the divinity within you, it is just a spark of the divinity within you. You are not the entire divine principle that is. So as you grow, as you take births in different life forms, you let that pond expand into an ocean. And what is the purpose of life? Be like a river and flow into the ocean. In these moments when we take lifetimes after lifetimes, we are the rivers and the tributaries that flow into the ocean. They chart different courses, they move through different planes, and finally they meet the divine that is the ocean. So that final meeting with the ocean is the moksha. And from there again, the water rises, the rain falls, and you come back. That is the whole purpose.
Yeah, Ram, I still am not convinced that the debate would go long.
May I add one little thing?
Can I, you see, this Swati's thinking is very esoteric, leave that. Okay, let's get back to the Bhagavad Gita. The point is very simple, Rajiv. Okay, what is the purpose of this life that you've got? This purpose of this life that you've got is to work on what is your Swadharma and try and achieve your Swadharma. Okay, that is the purpose of your life. Are you going to be born again? Quite honestly, Rajiv, I don't know. Okay, I don't know. I hope so, but I don't know. Right? So let's distinguish between what we know and what we don't know. We don't know, Rajiv. What he is trying to explain to us in this whole thing that you will be born again is that, look, when you are pursuing this particular life, okay, I think we need to take his question from the right perspective. The perspective is very simple. Okay, the perspective is that, look, there is a chance that if you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing, then you can be reborn in something which is not really the right way, okay, the right womb or whatever it is, in the right family. That is a possibility. So, can we separate these two questions? Question number one, how do I live today? Okay, how long am I going to live today? I don't know, right? But as long as I live, can I live my life being grateful to the fact that I've got this opportunity of life and going and achieving what I'm supposed to be achieving in my life? Can I live my life like that, right? The fact that I may be reborn, the fact that I may be born again, okay, is an unknown quantity as far as we are concerned, right? So let's not worry about what is going to happen next, what will happen, what will not. Let's not worry about that. Let us now start living life supposed to be living it with honesty, with truth, with etc., 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 all the qualities that he describes to us. Now, if you were to do that, Raji, if you were to do that, if somebody were to do that, and let us say the person at this point of time passes on, the Jivatma moves on, right? What is everybody going to tell around him? That, he lived a good life. And I'm sure this person is an inspiration. Now, to me, to be an inspiration, Rajiv, to a whole host of other people is moksha. Okay? If my life can inspire a whole host of people in this world, I think that is moksha, Rajiv. As we explained last time, moksha is what? Yeah, moksha is the smile on your daughter's face. Okay? That is moksha. So the point is, let us not worry. Let us not get into that area. So his learning to us is very clear that, boss, I have no idea. Remember one thing, there is this greatness within you. Try and bring that greatness to the fore on a daily basis. Now, whether you're going to be there, whether somebody is going to be there today, somebody is going to be there tomorrow, somebody is going to be there for the next 50 years, no idea. Also, he tells us another very interesting thing, Rajiv. If you recall in chapter 13, he makes this point. It doesn't matter what you've done till now. It doesn't matter what you've done till now. It doesn't matter how wicked a life that you've lived till now. But even now, you can make that course correction and start getting along on the path of your Swadharma. Okay? And your Swadharma is to be happy and to spread happiness. If you can do that, it doesn't matter whether you're doing it for the whole world. You can do it only for you and your wife. Perfectly all right. You can do it for only you and your children. Perfectly all right. But if you can live today as if you're going to be dying tomorrow, if you can live in the now, and today, instead of postponing working on your Swadharma for day after tomorrow when you have the time, or when you retire from life, or when you finish off all the all the trappings that you need to do, my son has to get settled, my daughter has to get married, etc., etc., etc. Don't postpone it. That is his lesson to us. Start living in the now and start living today. Even if it were to be the last day of your life, it's perfectly all right. But live today in a way that you are working on your Swadharma of spreading happiness. Now, what is the route you want to take is something that you can decide. I think that is more important. Let's not worry about the other aspect. That is just to give a contrast to us. Sometimes you need cold to understand heat. You need darkness to understand light, isn't it? How dark is something that you will never understand unless you know light. Okay? How loud is loud, you will never understand that unless you understand silence. So that is a contrast that he is giving us, saying it is possible. But today, can you live in a way that you are going to be happy? Don't postpone it to tomorrow. Start living in the now and live in such a way that you're going to be extremely happy that you're working on your Swadharma. If you can do that, you're doing fine. So should it happen? Should this incident happen tomorrow? Well, so be it. Okay. Can you live like that for the next 50 years? Fantastic. Okay. So be it. It doesn't really matter. But if you look at this whole cycle of birth and death, you know, birth is celebrated, death is full of grief. But his point to us is this, that, you know, handle that also. Of course, you're going to be grieving when somebody passes on, but look at it from a normal perspective. That's the point, Rajiv. Don't look at the other aspect. Look at the living aspect. Don't worry about, do I need to live for 50 years and do a course correction? No, you can do your course correction today if it is required. Do that course correction today. And if, God forbid, something happens to somebody tomorrow, it's all right. That's the point. Yes, Ashutosh, you were making a point.
Yeah, thank you. My turn has come. So, see, two things I would like to say. One is, there is a Hindu Dharma in which we believe that there is one Paramatma, and in our body, there is a part of it which is living, which is what we call it Jivatma. In Jainism, what they say that every body is God itself. Now, we're not going to debate of that because, every religion has its own doctrine. To perhaps, add something to Rajiv's question, what I believe that, this Maharshi Vyas has written this, this entire Bhagavad Gita, which is based on Vedas and Purans, is to teach us how to live this life. And perhaps, this is my belief, and perhaps the moksha is a kind of a lollipop, that he shows that, so that, because ultimately this life, if you want to be happy, he's showing the way. There are challenges of living, there are challenges of surviving, there are challenges of growing, there are challenges to achieve something. So how to do that? And if you do that with the purpose of, being a good person, being a person of a gentleman, or, getting away from all asakti, and not to have greed, and then you can perhaps live happily. That is the message of Gita, that you, in this life, you try to live happily, and the only way to do it, is to become to follow the Swadharma. And what is Swadharma? Is to keep yourself happy and make others happy, which is what you have explained. Thank you.
That's right. Absolutely.
I want to add one thing to Rajiv's question.
Please.
On a everyday basis, every medicine comes with an expiry date. Okay, so we all know that what that medicine is supposed to do. Does it stop curing us? Once that expiry date comes, we throw it, and the very essence, the chemical formula that that medicine has been made from, do we lose that? No, it goes. We use the same thing in making a new batch of the same medicine. Just as that, Nirjeev, it's वो कार्यरत है अपना स्वधर्म निभाने में. I think it applies equally to us also. You see, we may be knowing that, okay, we are going to die on such and such date. How it is that it is going to stop us from performing whatever that we are supposed to do, or whatever our Swadharma is. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That was a very simple, thought I had. Yeah.
Ma'am, the point is to live in the now, not to worry about what will
Yes.
happen in the
Yeah,
hereafter.
yeah.
What
Absolutely.
will happen, the hereafter will happen. We don't have sufficient knowledge about the hereafter. We have abundant knowledge about the now. The message of the Gita is live the now, and live that now in the way you need to live it. That's the message of the Gita. There is a hereafter. There are people who have done a lot of research in that area. There are a lot of people who have done about, there are so many other researches that have been done about past births, about future births. That is there. But I think the message of the Gita is simple, that look, there will be a past birth, there will be a future birth, but for God's sake, live in the now. That's more important at this point.
Ask something, Ramji.
Please, Go ahead.
What I understand from last 15 chapters that we have been hearing with you is that we need to be very focused on what our Swadharma is. This is like a practice. And we have to work with a lot of devotion for it. And then at one point there has to be a lot of gratitude, and then you surrender to God and you live in the now, is what you're trying to tell us. Like, I'm just giving an example what happened with me in this current year. Like in January, I thought of something which I was thinking that, now on I should live like this. Suddenly in March, COVID came in, and didn't anticipate that COVID will last for so many months. So 1 month, 2 months, you're waiting for COVID to get over. 3 months, 4 months, it's still not going. We are now 6 months past, it has not gone. Now suddenly the entire scenario has changed so much that what you thought in Jan with your mind and heart, what synced at that time is suddenly a very different course today. And today, though you want to live in the now as what you're saying, but it is very difficult to live in the now, because today the situation has made you in such a place that you really don't know what tomorrow is. You don't want to think of it, but you're forced to think about it because you're in a situation today that has really trapped you from all ends because of this whole COVID, the whole atmosphere, the whole everything. Although you want to be still very focused and devoted, like I don't want to change my devotion, I don't want to change my focus, but there's nothing that I can work on because of the situation that it is. So my practice, where my Swadharma is there, is not to the utmost, to what it should be because of the situation that what it is. So how, like now for me, it is only surrender, because there's nothing much that I can physically do for myself in the whole situation that I am in today. So although my focus, I don't want to change, although I do not want to change my devotion for any angle, I want to practice it day by day, but it's a very difficult, tricky situation as of now, at this point. And it is difficult to live in the now because the now is a very paused situation, because it's nothing that you can do. All you have to do is just have gratitude, bas. So that is the situation just now.
Fantastic. I think you're doing very well.
Thank you. That's all I can tell you.
No, you're doing very well. I think, see this collective pause button that has been hit for our life, I think is a wonderful thing that has happened. Okay? At no point of time in the history of the world, at least in the history of the known world, okay, I don't know what happened in 1920 when the plague happened. I believe something like this happened, but I have no documentary evidence. At no point of time has this pause button, this collective pause button, been hit for all of us in this world. Okay? See, earlier there would be some riots in some part of the world. There would be some part of the city. My life is still going on. My life has not been affected. There is one part of Bombay that there is some riot going on, but my life is continuing. Yeah, there's nothing happened to my life. My kids are going to school. Everything is going on. The boy is coming home, work is going on, I'm going to the office, all that is going on. Or there is a flood, unfortunately, somewhere, or there is an earthquake somewhere. In that localized area where there's a flood or a fire or an earthquake or whatever it is, a riot, there is a pause button that is hit. And that pause button is hit for whatever, 5 days, 6 days, 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, worst case situation, 1 year or whatever. But it doesn't impact me. I'm sitting in my house comfortably. I'm going to my office. I'm doing my work. I've got my customers. All that is going on. So this collective pause button that has been hit for everybody in this world is, I think, a very good thing. The other day I was participating in a very interesting debate. And the Swamini there said, actually, it is not coronavirus, it is coronavirus. Okay? I said, wow. She said, look, this is a coronavirus because this is helping us reconnect with ourselves, with our karuna. Okay? It is helping us recalibrate whatever our expectations in life are. Isn't it? So if you are saying, look, I'm living with gratitude, I think that's fantastic. Okay? And so great. So many of these plans come unstuck. So many of these plans, can you imagine people have planned weddings and they can't take place? It's something that people will look forward to, but it's not happening. So many things are not happening, and we're all getting used to living with the next normal now. But I think you're doing very well, Reshma, when you're saying I have adopted an attitude of gratitude right now for what I have.
Yes.
Then I'll wait it out. I mean, it'll take another 6 months, another 1 year, and then things will get back. Some kind of new normal, it'll happen. But it's a good pause button that has been hit for our life, quite honestly. I think the world was just over leveraging itself. Okay. And from a learning of the Gita, I think this whole living in the now is so important at this point of time. Like, be grateful for what you got. Okay. Count your blessings on a day-to-day basis, whatever you have. Right? You've got great health, count your blessings. You've got family around you, count your blessings. Okay? And just live in the now. I mean, just live with whatever you have. Right? Don't allow the chinta or the shok to enter your life. The chinta of the future or the shok of the past, of what you've not been able to achieve. Don't allow that to happen. Be grateful, live in the now. I think that's a great lesson for all of us. Things can't happen, could happen. What to do? That's life.
Thank you. Very motivating this 15 days was. So it was a very good thing that we did this. Thank you again.
Yes. So what Krishna is actually doing to all of us is that he is challenging our own thoughts. He is challenging our own thinking. Okay. And what he's done is that he's given us a beautiful opportunity, saying that, look, what are your fundamental thoughts? Now, come on, get that out and put it out. Okay, and let me challenge those thoughts of yours. Right? And I think that is the lesson that Krishna is doing with all of us. As I told you, up to the 12th chapter is kind of a easy ride. The nice ride is an easy ride. Here onwards, from the 13th, 14th, 15th, it's a very, very bumpy ride, because all our conditioning to get questioned, and we'll have to find answers. And there's no right answer. As Swati gave, that's one answer. Is it the right answer? No. Does the answer work for you? Great.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the way to look at all the inputs that you're getting, right? Okay? If the answer will work for you, if there is some way what she said can help you get back to what you want to in your life, your Swadharma, I think you're doing fine, like what Ashutosh said, or like what Rajiv asked, or what Ravish mentioned. I think each of these are important part. Yeah? Good. So with that, shall we close the session today?
Yes, I don't think there are any more questions.
Right. So nothing else. Tomorrow we get on to chapter number 16, which is another very, very interesting chapter in itself. Chapter number 16. Again, it's a small chapter. Please read it and come if you can, because he now moves on from Purushottama to what are the Daivik and what are the Asuric qualities that can confront us this whole journey. Okay. Again, full of questions, full of debates, full of challenges. Saying, is this a demonic quality? Is this a Daivik quality? He spends a lot of time educating us, saying that these are the qualities that are, if you recall, in 13 and 12 and others, especially in 11, 10, he talks about what enables. 16, he actually gets into a huge thing on what does not enable. And again, that is something that will get back to our conditioning, saying, seriously, I thought this was a good thing to do. Now you're telling me, Krishna, that this is not a good thing to do. So it's an interesting chapter. So if you can read it, that'll be nice. Right? So with that, let's close the session today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Tat Sat.
Thank you, Ramji. Thank you, Anurag. Thank you, Swati.